Now, for more on this story, we're now joined in studio by Thabi Leoka, an economist from Argan Asset Management. Thank you very much for joining us, Thabi.
It's a pleasure.
Now, briefly explain what today's outcome really means for South Africa.
You know, I think we've been given a little bit of room to breathe, but it doesn't mean that we should relax. It is, I think the next 6 months is a lot of hard work to prove to S&P and Fitch that we are able to reform the economy, that we are also able to stimulate growth so that we can have sustained growth beyond 2016.
Now, you've just mentioned that we have a lot of work to do in the next 6 months. What are some of the factors that influence this decision?
I think that, you know, besides the fact that we're doing well on the monetary policy side, I think that the Minister of Finance has done an exceptional job under very difficult circumstances to ensure that there's fiscal consolidation, and also that the projections that were in the budget review in February, that we are adhering to those projections. So I think that they're satisfied on that end, but on the GDP side and also politics, which falls under institutions, I think they are warning us that should we falter, we will get downgraded in December. So we need to sort out those two. And they've been very kind to actually put it out there. So when they do, or if they do downgrade us, we can't be surprised.
And I'm actually glad that you mentioned politics specifically, because I want to look at the macroeconomics level of this. How big a factor is politics when it comes to economics? Let's go through that.
So what they're looking at and how they would look at politics, it's not so much about the noise that we hear on a daily basis or a weekly basis between the hawks and the treasury, or the president, inability to actually come in between the two. I think that it's more of the impact of political instability on policy implementation, and if politics affects policy implementation to the point where we're not getting growth, that's where they'll start flagging us and then downgrading us. So that's where it counts in terms of politics.
Now, let's look at economic growth. They've now put it at 0.6%. That's extremely low.
Yeah.
What exactly does that mean for the country? I mean, in terms of jobs, in terms of even service delivery, what does that mean for the ordinary South African, a 0.6%
So 0.6% is actually on the higher end of forecasts. My forecast is 0.4%, and I've seen 0.2%. And that's because there's actually nothing domestically that will stimulate the economy, or because unemployment, we had the highest unemployment number since 2008, and that's since 2008 because the numbers were recorded since 2008, the current ones that we use. So at 27% unemployment rate, you cannot grow the economy. That's because a lot of your working age population is not working, and so we need to sort that out. We also need to sort out manufacturing, which is one of the biggest sectors, which is dwindling.
Manufacturing has been in decline for a long time now. How do we sort it out? Because there have been bailouts for the sector. Nothing seems to be working. So what needs to be done to stimulate that industry? Because that's really an industry that has the greatest potential for job creation,
Definitely. Right? I think that we need to be more creative. I think historically we've been relying on Europe. So a third of our exports go to Europe, and with the European economy faltering, we are struggling as a result. I think that we need to identify other markets, maybe Africa, or the rest of Africa, or Latin America, or emerging Asia. So we need to be very creative about it too. But again, we also need to start looking at sectors where we're doing well within the manufacturing. Obviously, iron ore, non-ferrous metals, all the metal-related components of manufacturing are slowing down because of falling commodity prices. So maybe we should start looking at beneficiation. So we create the finished good here and then export it to the rest of the continent, or emerging Europe, and emerging Latin America or Asia. So those things will help us. But right now, with our current, the way our current model is not working. They're very, we've got cheap Asian goods that are competing domestically. Our currency is uncompetitive. So those manufacturers that require products that are imported, they're importing it at a currency that's 15 Rand or 16 Rand often to the dollar. So that's what's impacting manufacturing sector.
Now, you mentioned that one thing that could work for us is looking into different markets. Let's look at South Africa in the context of BRICS. Is that working for us, or is it just another?
I don't think BRICS works for us, only because if you look at even BRICS, 2 of the BRIC economies are in recession, Brazil and Russia. Turkey is also similar to us in terms of waiting for a downgrade. I think one of their rating agencies have them sub-investment grade, and one has them at investment grade. So they have also political issues there. The only BRIC country that seems to be doing well is India. And there, how can India grow when the rest of global growth is slowing? So that's the challenge there. I think that we as South Africa need to look at other areas and make other, create partnerships that are outside of just confining us to the BRIC countries.
Now, you mentioned that some of our BRICS partners, are falling into recession or are in recession. May we fall in recession? Does it look like we're going to, considering your forecast of 0.4% and other forecasts of 0.2% economic growth this year?
Yeah. So to answer your question, I just want to do a snapshot of South Africa's economic history. So
Perfect.
From 1994 all the way to, let's say, 2008, it was the Mandela years. The world loved us, the world supported us, the world wanted South Africa to be a success story. I think the 10 years, 1998 till about 2008, global growth supported South Africa. So we were exporting more, many countries were consuming some of our products. So we were doing well because we were supported by global growth. Now, after 2008 financial crisis, the world is struggling to recover 7 years since then, and this has been one of the slowest recoveries globally since the Great Depression, where South Africa now is struggling to grow. So where do we see South Africa growing in future? If you're expecting about a 0.4% growth, that means South Africa, quarter-on-quarter growth will be very weak. I expect either 0% or close to, or a contraction in the first quarter. And also, this is not an outlier. If you look at the big economies on the continent, Nigeria contracted in the first quarter, so did Angola. And now the difficulty is, how do we get out of this 0.4% growth, this low growth scenario? It's going to be very, very difficult.
Perhaps to look at something that's big news right now are the upcoming local government elections. We're in an election year. How does that hinder proper planning or aid it, for example, in your perspective?
I think, trying to target the municipal elections is a bit short-sighted because they're very soon. I think that we should look beyond that and see how we can improve certain things within the economy. But I think that it will be a testing time to see how people vote and what the outcome of the vote will be. Because that will mean
and that will also give us, I guess, a clear picture of what's going to happen in the national elections.
Exactly.
When they come. Before we wrap up, I want us to look at an ideal South Africa, if there's such, an ideal economy for South Africa. What does that look like? And when will we achieve this? You're a forecaster, so.
Yeah, well, I think that we need to go back to the National Development Plan. I know that, it's not a perfect plan, but I think that it's the blueprint. I think that what it contains is very important for South Africa. So reducing the unemployment rate to below 10% should be our number one priority. And also education should go hand in hand with reducing unemployment. Skills development. We still have, there's a report from Stats SA that talks about the bulging youth. I think it's quite worrying that there are reports out there that say the current youth could be less equipped than their parents were. And their parents were mainly studied under apartheid South Africa. So it's, if you fast forward, what kind of country would we be if this is the current scenario? So reduce unemployment, upskill in terms of skilling the workers, making sure that we have good education, even if we have to import teachers from the continent to teach our youth. I think that is something that we could do. I think that we need to change the political environment. I think the political environment is very, very disruptive.
Elaborate on change. So what do you mean by change? So how would it look?
I would want there to be less of one party having such a stronghold, only because I think that it's not healthy for a democracy, and I think that there's a tendency to vote just because you're voting for the party and not because you have the best interest of the country at hand. And I think that we need to put the best interest of the country first before before political party.
Now, away from politics now, let's look at innovation, because that's something that's really major. We've seen the countries that are doing well are the countries that are really investing in innovation. Are we slacking a bit there?
We are, and you know, it's an interesting question because at the Davos World Economic Forum earlier this year, they were talking about the fourth revolution and how, you know, we're going to use driverless cars and you know, artificial intelligence. And I thought, wow, you know, these are the discussions that other developed markets are having, and we still need to, you know, tar roads to link villages. We still need to move from bucket system to normal toilet. I think
we're maybe not talking innovation because the basics aren't okay yet.
I think that the dangers of innovation in a country like ours and a continent like ours is that it's divisive right now. It can be divisive because those who can afford it will use it, and those who can't will lag.
Will be left on the back burner. Thabi, thank you so much for joining us. That was some great insight you gave us.
It's a pleasure.
That was economist Thabi Leoka from Argon Asset Management joining us live to talk about that S&B credit rating decision.